Peter Charles here of Hooked for Life Fly Fishing. And today we're going to do another Canadian fly pattern called the Mighty Bryson. It's been tied and designed by Bill Bryson in Nova Scotia. And it's a relatively straightforward black and yellow pattern. And I've actually done well over the years with black and yellow for steelhead. Funny enough, I don't use it that often as a color scheme. And I should really. So I think I'll be taking this fly out and giving it a try for steelhead on my next trip. Because as I say, I do like black and yellow and it has worked for me in the past. So let's get going and talk about the materials we're going to use. Now the pattern calls for this Mustad 36-890. I particularly don't care for this hook for this particular pattern. I use it on other flies, but not this one. And I'll explain what I'm going to do and why. I'm going to be using the size 4 low water salmon single. And in this pattern, we tied the tail on here, as usual, and then we put our tag over the tail, which is unusual. We don't normally do that. Usually the tag goes on first, then we add the tail. This is done the other way around. So if you have a hook like that Mustad that tapers off quite a bit here, what's going to happen is your tail is going to point downward. So I'm going to be using this Camasan hook instead because the shank is straighter. Has better chance for the tail to be, go straight back instead of curling down. Our thread is going to be this Vivus 80 black. Our tail and the hackle is going to be this yellow saddle hackle. Our rib is going to be this medium copper. Now, in the pattern, he talks about taking a scrubbing pad and pulling a piece of copper off the scrubbing pad. I guess that'll work, but if you've got the wire, use the wire. It'll be easier. The body is going to be this black yarn, and we're going to use squirrel tail, black dyed squirrel tail for the wing. So let's get started. I'm just going to bring my thread back to the hook point and no further. Put on the tail. There we go. Now we'll tie in our copper rib. And now for a wool body, and you notice I put it on bobbin holder because we are going to wrap 3 passes, and I find it easier to do and less wasteful if I use a bobbin. Okay, we get our thread out of the way. Now, as you can see, I've got a bump here. So what I do is I put my first wrap of wool over that bump quite tight. I'm really pulling on it hard. And as I come off the bump, I relax it. And that way the bump is not that apparent. I bring it up just on the return, come back. And if you got a little dent, you fill it up. Now you see the angle I'm holding it at? I do that so I can get a taper. There we go. And you can see the body has a taper to it, a bit of a cigar shape. And that's what I'm after. Now for the copper. Now I would suggest that these first wraps of copper at the back are done very carefully, get it started. And you can see my tail has already started to go around, so that's, take a moment to turn this as much as we can so the tail stays on top. Pull the tail up so it doesn't spin around the hook too much. There, I think I pretty well saved it. Okay, there's our tag complete. Now we go on to the rib. Okay, that's not too bad. That's the dodgy bit with this particular pattern method, is that when you put that copper wrap around the tail, it's going to move it a little bit. So you live with what you've got. Okay, the next step is the wing, because this is tied like a rat. We put the wing on and then we put on the collar. Now I've stacked the wing. And we don't want this to be too bulky. And this one is, perhaps we can reduce it a little bit. Put it back to the end of the gape. Pull up. Really bind that down. One of the advantages of using these Vivas threads, you can, even though this is 8/0, you can really crank it. Okay, now we're going to put on our yellow hackle. And this is not going to be too heavy a hackle. Get our hackle pliers. And we start. I always take my time with that first wrap because hackle tends to be a little thin at the end. That one didn't go well. Keep pushing the hackle back. One thing you can do, for example, is you could try to fold it. Some fold easily, some don't. So we'll try and fold this one. See if we can improve on the wrapping. Strays, just stroke them out of the way. You want that hackle slanted back, that fashion. You could, if you wanted to make a larger head, you could bring this back a little bit more. In the original pattern, they show a fairly large head, so we're going to make this one a little bit bigger. Keep it a little closer to the way it's shown in the pattern book. Okay, here we go. That makes sure it's really well angled back. Okay, now for a little bit of UV. Okay, there's a Mighty Bryson. I think it would be very effective for steelhead as well as Atlantic salmon, especially in that sort of the green stained water we get in steelhead season. I might tie it a little bit bigger for steelhead, but there you go. It's ready to fish, and I think it should do quite well. So give it a try, the Mighty Bryson. Cheers.